So if you study scriptures cognitively, you discover that God doesn't live in heaven. God actually lives in himself. But what God did is that he was motivated by love. Because what love does is that love wants to share. So God had dwelt in himself for aeons. He wanted to be experienced. He wanted to be felt. He wanted to be interacted with. But by reason of his energy, it's impossible. So God sat in himself and began to meditate. How can I design beings that can interact with me?
At the scent of water. That's what I'm hearing. At the scent of water. 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 The water of the word. Oh, fire is burning here. At the scent of water, a restoration is happening to your spiritual experiences. God is revisiting you again. Ladies, gentlemen, all together, revisiting you.
There are 4 major structures of reality. That unending oracle and deity called Yahweh Elohim is the foundation of reality. And then the sphere that gives allowance for the expression of that oracle is the second substructure of reality. Because without that sphere, it will be impossible to interact with him. And I will explain all of that. The third sphere or level of reality is the kingdom. The fourth is the power. And the last is the glory. So in 30 minutes, we will journey through the structure of reality. And we will find ourselves trafficking through these 5 layers and spiritual dimensions. And it's the extent to which we maximize what flows through this structure that brings value to our existence, both as individuals and as corporate entities. Because it's possible to spiral through time and not make contact with this very rigid spiritual structure and administration through which the life of God, the essence and the purposes of God is trafficked. The Bible said in 1 John chapter 1 from verse 5 that God is light. Say, this then is the message, the testimony that we have received from him, that God is light, and in him is no darkness. God is light, in him is no darkness. So the spiritual essence of God as captured in articulate speech. You know, it's difficult to interact with a spirit from a cognitive sense. The reason is because it's immaterial and intangible. But by all means, if you want to make sense out of the realities of God, one of the commodities, one of the infrastructures that can give idea and expression to that intangible and immaterial reality that cannot be captured cognitively is what the apostle was trying to make reference to. He said light. And light is energy. Light is vibration. Light is intangible expression of energy. And he said God is light. Just in case you are able to interface this being, you know, oh my God, help us. He said God is light. And when Paul came, Paul added some texture to that revelation. And in 1 Timothy chapter 6 verse 16, he said dwelling with him is immortality. And he said this one that holds immortality as a resource that it dispenses at will, he said he dwells in light. So God is light and God dwells in light. What it means is that there was no frame of reference to capture the essence of God. So God did not live in anything or anywhere. God lives in himself. It is impossible to host this oracle. The reason is because the energy level where he operates, you can't stand there. So he told Moses, no man can see me and live. I live in myself. The only way I can be safe is to tabernacle within myself. If I come out of myself, I am a consuming fire. It is impossible for creation to appear before this unending energy and dimension that flows from my belly. So even in heaven, the measure of God that comes into heaven, the angels can't relate with him. That's why they say holy. Because when we checked, it is impossible to approach you. So if you study scriptures cognitively, you will discover that God doesn't live in heaven. God actually lives in himself. But what God did is that he was motivated by love. Because what love does is that love wants to share. So God had dwelt in himself for aeons. He wanted to be experienced. He wanted to be felt. He wanted to be interacted with. But by reason of his energy, it's impossible. So God sat in himself and began to meditate. How can I design beings that can interact with me? So God, in that boisterous communion and commune between deity, he decided in the beginning to create the heavens and the earth. And when he created the heavens and the earth, he created spiritual beings and elements called the angels, or spiritual beings that could relate at a measure with him. So he put them in the heavens. And some of them were mobilized into the first earth, because Lucifer was the first governor of the first earth. Earth actually existed before man was born, and spirits ruled the affairs of the first earth. But when God designed this template called the heavens and the earth, it was still impossible for them to feel him, because they did not carry his DNA. That's why he said, to which of the angels did he say at any time, thou art my beloved son? None of them carried his DNA. So he created them out of tangible dimensions and intangible dimensions. And from intangible dimension, he incorporated his wisdom and allowed them to experience him. But that was not enough. Because they were not part of him, they desired to be like him. That was why Lucifer wanted to be like the Most High. Because he was not made of God. He was not made of the substance of God. And God felt that vacuum. That void was still there. And so long as that void was there, it was impossible to satisfy the yearnings and the promptings of God. So God came back into himself again after the Luciferious rebellion. And he began to mingle from himself. No time had not been created. So we don't know how long God contemplated within himself. But when the communion went on, it went on for long. And the Father spoke to the Logos. And the Logos spoke to the Spirit. And the Spirit spoke to the Father. And this communion and this vibration continued for ageless aeon, until God couldn't bear the energy anymore. And he busted, let us make man. So man was actually an offspring of koinonia. Man is an offspring of the communion and the commune that existed between the Father, the Logos, and the Spirit. Let us make man. Because God wanted to put that intangible substance in a dimension that could interact with him, so he could feel himself from outside himself. That deity cannot be approached. Let us make man. And he created the vessel from the dust of the ground, and he breathed into him. Because what he was looking for, if love can ever be expressed, then there must be a context. There must be a dimension. That was why he created the man, to put himself inside the man so he could mingle with the man. Now, when we talk about the church is actually not a system. The church is an organism that can host God, so that the mystery of love and oneness can be expressed. So the church is the vessel that deity dwells in. So the moment that context was found, the heartbeat of the Father could be satisfied. So in the cool of the day, the voice of God came walking in the garden. What he came to do in the garden was to be mingled with. Because Adam was not hearing God. Adam was interacting, communing, and intercoursing with God. Because when Adam ran away from the presence, he still heard the voice of God. So what God comes to do in the morning was to enter into the church so that there can be intercourse. The church was actually a place of intercourse. It was a place where man could interact with the divine. The church is an organism that had the DNA of God. And when God shows up, God can mingle with himself. That was the idea, because God wanted to achieve the mystery of oneness. So it's a migration from God to a context that can host God, so that koinonia can take place. But there is a governing policy that rules this koinonia. Koinonia is the heaviest molecule of existence. Ministry is rubbish unless there's koinonia. You have no ministry, because it's an overflow of that intercourse that exists between you and God. What we call ministry is not preaching. It's not building a system. What we call ministry is the ability of contacting Yahweh. And when you show up, you become an avalanche through which Yahweh flows through you. So you can be preaching, but you are not in ministry because you can't give expression to Yahweh. Somebody else could be on the street selling akara, but that akara he's selling, if he says good evening, Yahweh flows out of him. So that woman selling akara is more into ministry than a bishop. Snake, Ilinai, Barak, Netaya, Vandika, Paragane, Yereneata, Ovule, Kayanda. The building is not a church. The gathering is not a church. The people are not a church until they can contact God and express him. The church is an organism. Be it an individual, a people, or a system, an organism that can contact God and express him. This is what we are here to do. So if you studied, after God created the heavens and the earth, that communion could not take place. So what God did was to enter into Zion, and he downloaded what was in Zion and brought it into time. It's called Eden. He said, Lucifer, you were in Eden from the day of their creation. Ezekiel 28 verse 17. You were in Eden. You walked to and fro in the midst of the coals of fire, until iniquity was found in you, and you were cast as profane from the mountains of God. Eden is not what God created in time. Eden is what God downloaded from heaven. And the moment Eden was created, the man had a context where he could relate with God. That's the dimension. God wanted to create another dimension because Adam did not understand that Eden is church. Adam did not understand that Eden was an envelope that could only accommodate Yahweh. So what he did was, through rebellion, he punctured Eden and Lucifer entered. And the moment Lucifer entered, the church vanished, because the garden can remain, but the essence has been lost. The building can remain, but the essence has been lost. So God departed from Eden, and he said, they know not, neither will they understand. So they walk on in darkness, for the foundation of the earth have lost their causes. What it means is that God, who is the light, has been withdrawn. He had been withdrawn. So communion couldn't take place anymore. And when Jesus came back, he wanted to download Eden again. So he looked around and he walked with them for 3 years, and they could not find Eden because it's not on earth. Eden is a womb. It's a womb of the spirit where spirits are incubated. Eden is a womb of the spirit where spiritual intercourse takes place. And if you want to find Eden, you must journey into the spirit. So he said, who do men say I am? And they took the conclusions of the schools of thoughts. He says, some say you are Jeremiah's. I think the Pharisees gathered together and they studied and they said, what we see in this dimension, it looks like Jeremiah. He says, some say you are Isaiah, some say you are John the Baptist. And he said, well, I have a message for you. All of them failed, because what they are judging are manifestation. Only men who enter into the womb can find the question I'm asking, because Israel knew the acts of God. Moses knew the ways of God. They saw the miracles, but Moses went to where the miracle was created. So Moses knows how miracles are performed. Israel only see miracle, but Moses enter into Zion. That's why he said, ensure that you build according to the patterns that were revealed to you on the mountain. If you can't go into the spirit, you can't bring Eden down, because Eden is a downloaded version of the tabernacles of Zion. So build according to the pattern. So he said, who do men say I, the Son of Man, I am? The school of thought, they failed until Peter stood up and said, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus told him, what you did is that you traveled outside flesh. What you did is that you traveled outside time. What you did is that you traveled outside of human philosophy and ideology. You stepped out of earth. You stepped out of the visible universe. You actually stepped into the infinity dimensions, because what you have just done is that you have downloaded another Eden. What God did for 6 days, Peter did in a moment, because the one walking in the garden is the one standing with Peter. So when he said you are the Christ, he brought let there be light. When he said you are the Christ, he brought let the dry ground appear. When he said you are the Christ, he re-downloaded Eden. And Jesus said, upon this revelation, I will build my church. It's an organism. It's an organism. It's an organism. You can't have communion until there is a God and a context. It's called the structure of spiritual reality. This is why many are dry. This is why many can't know God. This is why many can't seem to access God. They have not journeyed. They have not journeyed. You can be in the market, but you can be in Eden. You can be in the bank, but you can be in Eden. So when all of us come together, what we do is that we are converging Edens, and it becomes a larger molecule. That's why I said, behold, how beautiful and pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in harmony. It's like the dew upon Mount Hermon. There the Lord commanded his blessings. Please sit down.